Welcome to Cycle Breakers and Moneymakers, a podcast for women of color and first gen who are breaking generational cycles and glass ceilings by going places no one before them has ever gone. I'm your host, leadership coach, and eldest daughter of immigrants, Mariela De La Mora. I left a 16-year marketing career to create a multiple six-figure-a-year coaching business as a single mom. Each week, you'll learn how to build unshakable self-trust, become in demand, lead with confidence, and make more money by being more of who you are. This is Book Out with Our Burnout with Thought Leadership. I am going to just be sharing kind of bigger picture things of why I grew my business in the way that I did in a very, what I would say, like daughter of immigrant friendly way, parent friendly way, by being able to create a business that sustains me and my daughter. But also that I'm not having to be on and like live my life on social media, but also feeling like if I'm going to do this and I'm going to, put myself through all of the emotional turmoil that it requires to have a business, then I at least want to feel like I'm making a difference in doing work that matters. So with that being said, I just want to make sure that my brain is recording this call. Shami is from my team. She's got her camera off, but she's here just in case there's any questions. Oh, I see it. I see our grain is on. So we are all good to go. Thank you for being here. Thank you for dropping your intros in the chat. Just for any questions that you've got, you can drop them in the chat. My team is on, so they're going to take the questions and drop them into a Google Doc. That way I can kind of stay focused and, talk to you all and present. And then at the end, I'm going to be having a look at them. So we're breaking down who asked the question and what the question was. But in the meantime, you can keep yourselves muted, but go ahead and just drop, like I said, things in the chat. We are going to be talking about some of the I'm going to start off just by talking to you about misconceptions around marketing and visibility. We're going to talk about thought leadership, what thought leadership is, the way that I define it, because there's a lot of different definitions out there, but the way that I've taught thought leadership is in a way that generates demand by also allowing you to be yourself. Then after I kind of phrase the thought leadership, I'm going to talk you through 3 strategies that have helped my clients to book out, create more demand by producing less. So literally we took client results, case studies, we ran them through ChatGPT, we took out common threads. I worked with one of my clients as well who has a marketing agency, Kira, and we just kind of extracted everybody's, just different success stories and really looked at what were those common threads relative to thought leadership, because there were different aspects of it. Some people slightly restructured their business models. Some people did different things, but with regards to thought leadership and what allowed them to book out and create the results without changing drastically, this is what I'm going to be talking to you about today. And after that, I'm going to share how we do those specific strategies. What do they look like within Reclamation Mastermind? And I'll share more about the program at the end after the training. And then I'm going to open up for Q&A at the end. And if you stay until the end, I'm very nervous to announce this, but I have to just make a decision. If you stay till the end, I'm making an announcement about in-person. Optional, but it has not left my mind. My clients already know about it. We're making a decision next week, but there's some stuff coming because I absolutely want to create more opportunities for everybody to come together, because I saw how impactful it was at the Mexico City retreat last year. And I just want to see my clients. I want to just be with y'all. I want to create more opportunities, not just to get coached by me, but also for people to come together. So whether it's San Francisco, which might be a little bit more accessible, or international, we're working all that out. So I'm going to talk about that at the end. I've not talked about that publicly. So I'm going to share, some of these are going to be just me sharing without slides. When we get to case studies, there will be slides, but who I am, a little bit about me. I am a leadership and business coach serving primarily daughters of immigrants. Prior to this, I was a marketing director for 16 years, from 2004 to 2020. So a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking to you about today were not things that I learned from coaching. They are things that I refined through being a coach, but they are things that I literally did for my career in terms of helping businesses to strengthen their brand positioning, to really be able to, multiply their sales without changing the actual offer. And I wanted to just talk to you guys about the reasons that I left corporate that shaped what I'm going to talk to you about today. So, and why it's important, because I think that when women of color start businesses, we're often doing it because we weren't able to either make the money that we want to make, we weren't able to be ourselves, or we want to do work that matters. And so for me, a little bit about me that's going to shape what I'm going to talk to you about today is that when I left corporate, it was for three reasons. One was that I did not want to trade my values for money anymore. I worked in the health insurance industry. As you all know, I don't have to tell y'all, like, health insurance is shady. It was shady back then. There were days that I had to like cross the picket line to get to work because people were saying you denied my wife like her cancer treatment, and just me feeling like, shit, I have to go to work. And like, I just feel like I'm doing a horrible thing. And I'm writing words that are technically accurate that the company won't get sued, but we're like lying to people. And I had to get really good at like writing words that were accurate that lawyers would approve, but that like hurt people. And I left and went to other industries, but then I just kind of found that it followed me. And I think I realized at a certain point that me being a marketer at a certain level meant that my job was to protect the company's image. And I just wasn't about that shit. I just don't want to do it. Like, I don't want to do things that I don't believe in that just put the money in the pockets of people who already have too much and hurting people. So I didn't want to trade my values for money. I also just didn't want to compromise my time, my family time, especially my time as a mom, for money. And when I left, I had gotten to the point in my career where I knew that they were going to own me. Like, I knew there was no lightweight to do my job. Like, I was basically starting new divisions, and nobody said it was okay that I had to do drop off and pick up. You know, like, I could only be in the office for 5 hours. I'm a single parent. And so it felt like I was apologizing just for like me being who I was. And I'm just like, why am I fighting so hard? Like, apologizing for things that I need, when the most important thing is like, I want to be there present with her. Like, I don't want people to tell me what she did today. I want to be there to create those memories with her. So for me, time was important. So when I started a business, I was like, I don't want to live my life for this business. I don't want this business to even be my number one priority. I don't want your business to be your number one priority. I want you and your family and the people you love, and have this be something you're really, really good at and you really love it. But it's different than it being your whole life and your whole identity. That we can sense that, people can feel that attachment of like, you need that okayness. And I just didn't want that. That was not my number one thing. I want to do work that matters, but I don't want this to be the thing that I live and breathe, right? And then the third reason that I left was I felt like, no, I had to leave more and more of my identity at the door. Drop in the chat if you've ever felt like you couldn't be yourself, whether it was the way that you talked or the way that you dressed or your mannerisms or any of that, if it was ever called out. I know for me, it felt like it was less and less appropriate for me to be myself because it was just like whiter and whiter the more I went up. And now the things that I do around like wearing my hoop earrings and getting my nails, like, you know, having like long nails and talking the way that I talk, it's just like, to me, that's just very liberating. Yeah, 100%. Even got actively reprimanded for it. Yeah, that's wild. 100%. I did not feel safe. Yeah, even like your curly hair, what are you going to do for being yourself? Yeah, I told this story before. Keep sharing. I would love to hear like if you ever just felt like you literally couldn't just exist being yourself. But I remember like one of my very first experiences with feeling like the way that I was not okay was when I was 19 and I used to work for a company called Cellular One. They no longer exist. This was the year 2000. Like cell phones were new back then. And I went to almost 100% Black and brown school. Like, there were no white kids at my school. So I learned how to speak English with Black and brown kids. I didn't know English until I was 6. I learned it in school. This is just the way that I talk. And my boss at the time, I remember being like, I want to be on the inside sales team because they're making bank, like they're making money. They're selling cell phones to people and plans. And he's like, oh, no. You would have to lose the street from your voice before I would ever put you on the phones. And I didn't know what that meant. Like, what does street from my voice mean? I literally had only gone to this public school system, and it's just things like that. And so we learn from a very, very early age, like what is appropriate, and we learn to be less of ourselves. And so to me, I see entrepreneurship as an opportunity to choose again and be able to create those rules. But if we pigeonhole ourselves from the beginning, feeling like we have to be professional, even though professional is just like very rooted in white supremacy, it can feel like you're building a bigger and bigger stage to perform on. And I have seen how this has played out as my business has grown. And I have felt like, you can't say that anymore. You can't do this. You had a 6-figure launch. Like you made X amount of money. Like people are expecting this from you. Those voices are going to be there anyways. But because I made the conscious effort from the beginning to be like, my business is going to be built on what I believe in. There's not going to be any difference between what I say on the internet, what I say in real life, what I say on coaching calls. Like I bet, like I want it to feel like I am being the same person, but I also don't want to trade my values for money. I want to feel like I'm helping my people and I'm not replicating the same situation that I walked away from in corporate. Shout out to my emotional support blazer that I kept the office. Yeah, that it felt like a costume for sure. So with that being said, at the time when I started my business in 2019, I started making money in 2020. I wasn't actively thinking, I'm going to start my business with thought leadership. I knew the term. I mean, I'm a marketer. I just thought at the time I'm going to build a brand and then I'm going to figure out what I'm going to sell. So if you don't know, start building a brand, start sharing your brand story, start sharing what you care about. You'll start to magnetize an audience. So I did that for like a year before I knew what I was going to do. So I wasn't thinking thought leadership, but I was thinking I want to be myself and I don't want to choose between being myself and making money. I don't want my work to be my whole life, but I want to make an impact. And I need to make 6 figures profit. Like we're in San Francisco, it is expensive, right? And so I think sometimes there's this misconception that like when you want to help people, like you also have to like be broke and not make money. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that. We are making money. 6 figures is like considered low income in San Francisco, which is wild. So like I think from the beginning, I was like, cool, how can I make 6 figures my first year? And so this is why I look at thought leadership. Thought leadership naturally lends itself to more credibility, being able to land higher ticket clients, more trust, having more visibility across different platforms. So it actually so happens that it aligns with making more money without doing more. So with that being said, I want to share a few of the biggest misconceptions, like problems and misconceptions that have come up with my Reclamation clients, meaning when they join the program, there have been common threads that I feel like they either correct or they heal in the program. Sometimes they come in and they're like, I'm so mad. I feel like I've been holding this belief this whole time and like it's not true, or I was making myself wrong for this, or I had this intuitive nudge that didn't make sense for me. And then they come to the program and the reason that they get a different answer is generally because they are coming to me who has done a lot of different marketing for different types of companies. So my answer to almost anything as a 44-year-old woman who has lived a lot of life, and you will know older people when you talk to us and we have been through some shit, is that the answer to most things is it depends. So like there's very rarely absolutes. Like even if my answer to something that you ask me is yes, I'm going to be like, okay, yes, that makes sense, but I'm going to tell you why. It's because you shared this and because you shared this. And if it had been this way, then I would have said this, but I want you to understand why, because I want you to be able to trust yourself more with every interaction. So that being said, biggest misconceptions. Number one is that growth requires having a one-to-many offer, like scaling a group program, growing an agency, something along those lines. We're not at the slide portion yet, by the way, but yeah, creating a one-to-many offer. And so what my clients have actually done instead of one-to-many offers is they have ventured into consulting. They have sold higher level, like premium offers to very like niche specific clients because they're able to like notice that there's other ways of them delivering what it is that they know beyond what they're doing. Some of them also get paid to speak and to run workshops. Many of them work with companies, not just individuals. So there's lots of ways for you to make more money. That doesn't mean like scaling a group program. And then I think about Damari, like being an attorney, it's like, what are you going to, I mean, you can have a membership or you can have a template library or something, but then there's also other things. It's like you're a gold mine of knowledge. What are the different ways that you can monetize that? So the one idea that they come to me, a misconception, is growth means a one-to-many offer. Another one is that growth requires launching. It doesn't. My clients, most of them don't launch. Oh, tax accountant, but attorney. Okay. Attorney is next. Yeah. So I just think about sometimes it just doesn't make any sense. Right. And then another one is that somebody out there has the right strategy if I can just find it and if I can just get it right. And if there's anything that I can clear up, is that strategies are created based on your goals, and they're based on what's happened, like how your ideal clients buy. It's based on your preferences. It's not based on copying someone's strategy, because and sometimes that's what's sold, and then people will try it and like it either doesn't feel good to them or it doesn't work for them. And one thing that I will say too is that this often happens because people are learning from coaches, and the coaches created success by selling coaching, but they didn't necessarily create success for different business models. And that's through no fault of their own, but I think sometimes that can be correct but incomplete. And so I think that what happens, especially if you have come from a coaching program, is you're learning coach specific marketing and selling. And they will say that it can work for different things, but it's so important to understand, like, if I had the skills to sell anything, to market anything, what questions would I be asking myself instead? And that is what I teach instead. It's like understanding how people buy, what motivates them, and leading with your strengths is going to produce a different answer every time, but it's going to actually produce a more profitable answer. So I would love to know, I'm going to put this in the chat as far as a question, just because I'm always very, very fascinated with the answer to this, was like, which rules have you heard about marketing that are not true, or that you just kind of were suspicious about? I'm going to drop what I just shared, and anything else around like do's and don'ts, that you can't do this, you have to do this. So it's the bold stuff. So the bold is growth means one to many. Growth requires launching or posting more, or that somebody out there has the right strategy. Like, I just can't seem to get it right. Like, if you could just find it, implement it right, you can grow. And that's just really freaking spins people out, to be honest. So the truth really is that you need skills and information to build a strategy. So part of this is why I don't advise my clients the same way. We're going to look at what it is that you're selling, who you're selling it to, what do they need in order to make a purchase decision. So I think about like Camila being a photographer and a videographer is absolutely not going to sell in the same way that an attorney would sell or a coach would sell. It's just very different. Literally the exact same person would buy differently if they were joining a money program, or they were hiring an attorney, or if they were hiring a life coach. Like, the same person is like, so it's bananas to me to think that people think that they can tell their clients that they all have to do similar things. Like, this is not true. And so with this, the reason why I focus on building skills in my clients, because I want you to always have this. When they come to me and they have ideas, I'm like, bam, I never could have come up with that. You're already thinking in terms of looking for where the opportunity is and what you can create to meet that opportunity versus, is this the right thing to do? So misconceptions when it comes to booking out or making more money that I have heard. I'm going to drop this also in the chat. Number one is, if I take a break, my business will slow down. Number two is, success means I can't be myself. I have to sound professional. Number three is, I have to be consistent on social media. Like, they'll get to a point and they're like, oh man, I haven't been consistent on social media. And I'm just like, is that your primary thing that you should be focusing on right now? Are you doing any sort of like lead generation? Are you nurturing anything else? So I have to be consistent on social media as number three. Number four is, getting here was hard. I don't even know if I want to make any money, like more money. Like, this is too much. Like, sometimes that's just where they're at. Number five would be, I just need to sell harder and focus on the result, not myself. I was told not to talk about myself, or I was told not to talk about like my story. I just need to focus on the result. And I'm like, generally when people are doing that, they are having a harder time because they feel like they have to hide parts of themselves. Out of these, tell me if any of these, like I said, I ask so many questions as a coach. I feel like I'm almost like to me, the marketing psychology of it was always the most fascinating part. Why do people do what they do? So this is why I ask a lot of questions. Let me know if you've ever heard any of these about growth, or you've ever thought any of these about growth. It's really scary that if I take a break, my business will slow down. I'll just share this just because like I emailed about this, how for like the last 6 months, I've just been like not massively depressed, but I've been depressed like most days. And it's really scary because I've thought about like, damn it, like, why can't I just feel better so that I could focus on like making more money or like producing more content? And it really, really made me be like, how much do you believe in what you're talking about? Because it was very scary. It was kind of like I was living in this house and I had days where I was like, Mariela, somebody else created this life and now you're living in it, and like you're living in her house and you can't even get out of bed and you feel shitty and you're exhausted all the time and you don't know why. And it was really scary. And I felt so vulnerable. Like I almost can cry thinking about it because it's like my daughter is so like carefree and she's just like playing. And granted, this is my fault. I made her be bougie because like we go on trips and like sometimes we would go on, to hotel trips and things like that. And so she would like ask me for stuff. And I just was like, I just don't like, I'm scared that I'm not going to come out of this. And there were just days where I thought about how much I over indexed on like showing my face and being confident and all of that, that now I was like, I literally, the last thing that I want is for anybody to see my face. Like, I just want to serve my clients. That always felt easy. And I just want to be a mom. And I didn't have a lot of energy for anything else. I'm now working through like why I've been so exhausted. I've had some stuff going on, but it really made me think about that fear of if I take a break, my business will slow down. And so I did. I literally took like 6 months off of selling. And all I did from basically like August through like this month, it's funny because like I still landed clients. Granted, I noticed the difference when I'm not out there going ham, but I still landed private clients. Some of you guys are here in this room, we may and Jen, and y'all just reached out and I really wasn't like posting, but I also was like, okay, what can I do? So what I did was I sent out an email and I was just like, I'm looking to be on podcasts, on your podcast. This is the first time I've ever put like any sort of pitch out, but this was like a mass pitch. And I had people reach out and say like, yes, absolutely. Like, I would love for you to be on my podcast. And it just was like a reminder that in the seasons where like getting words out and making decisions just felt so hard, I still had a level of trust and reputation, like as a thought leader, that people, number one, would want to work with me, even if I wasn't like doing the most on social media, and that I could still be invited to share my story and expertise on other people's platforms. And I think about that as like, I built this house that nobody can take away from me, because it isn't just, it's bigger than my offers, right? And that's what thought leadership does, is it allows you to build something that's bigger than your offers. So with this being said, again, what you really need and what I have saved me in like one of the hardest times in my life that I was just like, I don't know, like, when is this going to go away? These last 6 months was really just being like, how much do I believe in, thought leadership and the reputation that this has created? So here is how thought leadership actually helps you to book out without burnout. After this, I'm going to share some case studies. But number one, what it does is it creates opportunities for you to share what you know on other people's platforms, right? So whether that's an event, an actual like a co-working space, chamber of commerce, a podcast, someone's membership or group program, when you have thought leadership, generally thought leadership comes with a story. They're like, we've never heard you talk about what you're talking about. We love your story. We see ourselves in your story. Can you please come and talk about this? And what that does is it means your brand exists in more than just the places that you've built. You have a level of trust with these other brands, people, and platforms that they are saying, I will co-sign you and bring you onto something that I worked hard to build because I want you to share what you know with me. And in marketing terms, that's lead generation. That is also what is called third-party credibility, which essentially means somebody co-signed, right? Third-party credibility is like, well, if we trust this person and they brought you into this event, into this podcast, into this membership, you must be legit. Like, this person must be trustworthy, right? And that matters when it comes to creating more, because you think about, for me, I would say you being a guest on someone's podcast carries so much more trust than even one of your own podcasts, because of the fact that you're going to reach new people and someone's like let you be on, right? And that should be part of your strategy always. It also creates what is essentially pre-sold clients. So clients that are like, I want to work with you. This is kind of a vibe check, right? Like, you don't have to work as hard in your marketing. So I've always thought about how like, I don't like how marketing feels when it sounds like you're arguing with your audience and you're just like telling them all the stuff they're doing wrong and you're correcting them. And I just have never liked how that felt. I'm like, I'm not a little kid. You don't need to talk to me like that. And first of all, you don't know what I'm doing, actually. When they make assumptions about you and talk about you like you're struggling, I'm like, I talk to my people like they're smart and they just want something different or they want it to be easier. And I speak to them with respect. But I also, because of thought leadership, they're also just like, you know what? I want to work with you, but I have some questions. And like, this is important to me. And so it does create pre-sold clients in that sense. And a quick story about that was I recently shared on my podcast that my client, Carmen,
who's in Reclamation, wasn't looking for a coach or a mastermind. And she shared on the podcast that she's just like, I heard you on a podcast. And like that day I looked you up. I wasn't looking for a coach and I just set up the call with you. And I already knew it was a yes. I just basically wanted to talk to you to make sure you weren't like racist or homophobic. And so if that was fine, I'm in. And it's just like the ultimate, like, just, I don't know, the compliment, trust that people, that your thought leadership, you sharing your expertise on someone else's platform could have that impact on someone, but it does all the time, right? So what it looks like when you have thought leadership is you have clients that reach out and they're ready to work with you. By the time that they approach you, they just have some questions. You will also attract new leads and clients from places when you're not even actively creating content and posting. You will get invited to things that don't allow pitches. Some of the most exclusive like events, podcasts, like they know who they want. They will reach out to you specifically, like with Janice from Yo Quiero Dinero, she's told me before, she's like, I don't mess with that because I've had bad experiences. So she's like, if I invite you on, it's because I pick who I'm speaking to. And so it's podcasts that have had like 1 million downloads that won't allow pitches. So like you don't even have to work as hard to pitch. I still teach my clients how to pitch, and having a strong story and thought leadership helps, but you also are going to be invited. It supports you having higher ticket clients as well. It affects how they show up to working with you. It does, because I've seen it. This is what I'm talking through right now. You don't get compared. So I never get asked like, how are you different from so-and-so? I'm like, it's very obvious how I'm different. If someone let's say sets up a sales call with me and then they go work with someone else, I'm always like, that's perfect. That makes perfect sense, because I don't even compare myself. I'm like, I'm so different from anybody. And I have a lot of coach friends. Granted, it like will happen from time to time, but I'm like, I'm literally so different from anybody else that like, it totally makes sense. And most importantly, you get to share and be who you are. And know that it's not a deterrent. It actually will help you make more money. So with that being said, now we're going to transition to the slide part, because I actually want you to see the words that I'm sharing around the 3 strategies to book out without burnout. And for each of the examples, I'm going to share a couple of clients that represent that strategy. Granted, each client, we did more than one thing, but that client is a perfect example of that strategy so that you can see what it looks like. You know what I found too? I just coached on this today in Reclamation around how when you're actually doing something, meaning you're doing something that really is different from your old identity. So it's almost like if you think about you're a little train on a track, and if you never healed, if you never questioned anything, if you just did exactly what was expected of you, that track is set. The more you go off that track, what will actually happen is that the imposter syndrome will get louder as you are creating evidence of you doing something different. So it's like, okay, I was thinking about it, but now I'm doing this different. Like, look at my daily activities. Look at how I'm showing up. Look at these results. And then the imposter syndrome, you would think it would shut up, but I talked about it in Reclamation today. And I said, it's like a mean girl out of school that doesn't like the new girl. And she's just like, this bitch, like, I don't like her. She's just getting too much attention. And you'll start to notice that that voice gets louder, which is why when you build a business, you don't have to perform for it. It's just easier because you're like, and now I'm just going to ease in to who I am is enough, and that what I know is enough, right? So we don't want to, yeah, it's a mean girl at the school. If y'all know the way that I mindset coach, I do like inner parts. I'm like, this is like inner parts work. I just do everything with analogies because I've been to so much therapy, cried so much. I've done all the things that I'm like, number one, the best thing I can do is like be sarcastic about it and be funny about it, but also like make it tangible for people to say like, this is how it feels like when you're growing a business. You have a little inner boardroom and they're all talking shit and they all want control. And the one that you fed the most wants to be in control the most. And you're just learning how to feed a different part that's more compassionate, more grounded, loving, wise. Meanwhile, the other one, for me, that's my clipboard that's like, okay, what are we doing? What are we doing? What did you do today? Okay, like that is, I'm learning to let another part lead. So this is just side note. This is another thing you're going to get with me is analogies about all the things. So that being said, I'm going to share. All right. So strategy number 1, I feel like I talk about this all the time, but I'm like, I cannot say it enough. Any successful business is built off the back of an unmet or emerging need, not a niche. And I want to talk to you about what that means. So a niche is a thing you pick. It could be a thing you just want to do. It doesn't mean necessarily that there is a huge market demand for it. In my world, if we were going to come up with a new product, or when I was interviewing at tech and everything was new, they're just like, we can't, like, we need to know data. Like, what do you mean? Why are you creating this? So, an unmet need essentially is something that an audience is experiencing as a lack, and they are trying to actively solve it, but something is missing the mark. TAM is total addressable market. What we call it in the, like, this is just in the marketing and business world and the startup world, total addressable market. Total addressable market is how many people would actually buy this thing. And while we only have so much data, what will typically happen is you will have clients come to you and say, or you'll just, when you first create an offer, you don't have clients come to you, you're just making stuff up, but you're looking and you're just like, I'm creating what I once needed, could be one version of that. Then I'm finding I'm not the only one. That could be like a version of an unmet need. An emerging need might be something like, what do people need this year in a Trump era? Like, what do people need that is different because of what's happening in the world, right? An emerging need would be what happened to businesses during the pandemic. People who helped, let's say, fitness studios go online, they made bank, right? So an unmet or emerging need doesn't mean you have to change what you're selling. Guaranteed, you probably are already meeting an unmet need, especially if you're thinking about a population that's usually unseen, if you're thinking about some kind of an in-between, like they've come to you, but before they were trying to solve it in a different way and it just wasn't hitting the mark, you're probably already doing it. But what is important is figuring out what is that little slice and then being louder about it and saying, what is missing in the world is this. And here's who it's missing for. And here is why that matters. And here is how I solve that differently. And here's what I believe with regards to that thing. And you become an advocate for that unmet need. You become an advocate through your marketing and your words. So I would say how you find it is look for where an audience agrees they have a problem that they've been actively trying to solve, but it's missed the mark. And like I said, what's your beliefs around this and how do you serve it differently and better? This on its own is like where the money is for anything. And then you don't feel like you have to argue with people or convince them of anything because they're going to be like, yes, that's exactly what I'm going through. Yeah, I've tried to solve this. I'll give you an example. So my client Yudi, who also was my somatic coach for all of 2022, during a very expansive, scary part of my life, has been in Reclamation 3 times. And one of the biggest shifts was figuring out that there was a huge unmet need for safety in entrepreneurship. So she was a therapist, so she helped people with somatic, nervous system regulation, doing somatic work. But entrepreneurs experienced that need differently because we are triggered all the time. Like we're activated all the time, and we basically have to evolve faster than the average person. So what the unmet need was, entrepreneurs need safety and capacity in order to navigate business. So she blended the skill of nervous system. There's like a nervous system gap between therapy and mindset coaching because a therapist doesn't necessarily understand the complexities of growing a scale or scaling a business. And mindset coaching also doesn't necessarily have the tools to help you go into your body safely and to be able to build that capacity, right? So the business result in the latest round was going full-time in 2023, 6 figures back-to-back years. And I still think, I know that this isn't the whole market, but I don't really see very many people doing what she's doing. So I still think she's like one of the only people that is doing her type of work. So she took a skill she had and she said, this particular audience is trying to solve this through their regular coach. They're trying to solve this through mindset. They're trying to solve it in all these other ways. I'm going to help them. So, and a life result, which is why travel, family, and sabbaticals, she took a sabbatical last year and she decided like she's just deepening her commitment to doing business her way and in the things that she really cares about versus like what anybody expects and really what she thinks is needed in the world, which you need a lot of safety to be able to do. And my client Kira, in terms of unmet need, was originally she saw an unmet need in the market, which was content without data typically didn't convert very well. But what she was trying to sell at the time was getting people to like value data. You need to know data. We're going to deliver it in this way. And I think what she ended up figuring out was there is this unmet need, but how could you bring it to what people are her specific audience was like ready to buy and what they were asking for the most. So what she ended up doing was, instead of teaching data for launches, she ended up having a content creation studio that is based on data. So it's like you're giving them what they want, but you're still backing it through data. And she just became known as a data expert, was featured in a ton of places, speaking engagements, and now has an offer suite that people stick around and buy from her over and over again. But really, she had the thought leadership, like she had the gap. But what we don't want to do is argue with the way people buy and try to get them to take a different action. So I think that what she realized was like, I am actually going to deliver this for them in a different way. And this is all part of, like, we went back and forth. Like, we'll go back and forth as long as it takes for us to figure this out. And there's different business models, but this was such a great example of someone who was like, got it, implemented, iterated, did her own market research, brought stuff to me, got coached, and now has her highest retention, highest revenue in 4 years, highest recurring revenue, which to me is a sign of a healthy business, because anybody could say 12K day, whatever, 12K month, but like, how healthy is your business? Do you have monthly recurring revenue coming in, right? So that is strategy number one. One thing about she's going to go back and forth with you. I always say that. I'm like, I got time. We could voice note back and forth. Like, just talk to me about it. I will problem solve. That's literally my job. I love doing it. Bring me the stuff. We will figure it out. And you know what I'm not going to do? If there is something in the curriculum, I will tell you, go watch this and then come back to me. But I'm not going to dismiss you to the curriculum. I'm going to say, bring it to me. Tell me your thoughts about it. How do you think that you're going to approach this? Tell me what you're stuck on. Let's figure this out. So it's just a very different space, because I am a marketer and I am a thought partner to my clients. So using your strengths as your visibility. This is actually like everybody in the mastermind, I would say, but it's just easier. It converts better. I'm doing that with y'all right now, in that if I had slides throughout, I think it would have felt a little more awkward. So I want to give you an example. Let's say your strength is responding. My strength is responding. If you don't give me a thing, I don't even know what to say to you. But if you ask me a question, I'm like, boom, I got you. Ask me a question, boom, I got you, right? If you know what your strength is, you think about, like, with helping people, is it speaking? Is it teaching? Is it simplification? Is it storytelling? Sometimes that's been reflected back to you. What is that strength, and how can you be more public with it? How can that actually be the way that you market? Not 100% exclusively, but how could that be primarily what you are public with? So if your strength is responding without it being scripted, meaning like somebody's got a thing, you respond to it and it's brilliant, then your marketing should center people seeing or hearing you in action. So this is just one example. So things like video-based content, but you're answering a question you just got asked. That way you don't draw a blank of like, what should I talk about, right? You should definitely be pitching to speak on podcasts and events, because you're probably going to be brilliant there. People are going to love watching that, element of back and forth. You can also propose an offer to organizations that you have worked with in the past. Maybe you've spoken for them. Maybe a friend works there and you want to propose something they have a wellness department or an ERG or anything along those lines. And you're just like, I want to propose this. Or if you're a photographer and you're like, I could photograph retreats. Not that, Camila, you would do that, because I know that's not what you do, but it's things like that about like, how could I market and use my strengths? So for you, you might have an easier time going live with your clients than just talking on your own. I know for me, I do speak to type all day. That's my strength. So an example of leading with your strengths is Michelle. So Michelle's always been a speaker. She was always a speaker, but when she joined, she was getting paid to speak. And then she also had a group program and also had one-on-one clients, but the speaking almost was like a parallel, but different part of the business, different ideal clients. Like the organizations that hired her to speak were not the same as the people who joined her group program. And so realized that, number one, she didn't want a business model that required her to launch. She didn't want to scale a group program. Looked at where her opportunities were already knocking on the door, that she wasn't even, it's like she was already plugged into all of these networks. So what she actually did was leveraged the speaking engagements she already was getting brought into. And instead, she built long-term relationships with those same organizations and came in and did leadership consulting. Took the front-facing program that she was selling and actually was asked to deliver it in-house for their leaders. So it's like sometimes you have an offer and you're selling it to individual consumers, but organizations could benefit from it as well, which is part of what, was kind of discovered through like where are the biggest opportunities. And the flex story that I like love because this happened in September where she was just like, I'm just going to go on vacation. And, I'm just going to trust that like what I'm doing is already working, right? Because one of the things she reflects back that I said to her was like, what if it's already done? And she's like, came back, 5 sales calls, landed a contract with a friend of hers and ended up being like just under 6 figures for her and went from literally like 20 one-on-one clients at a certain point. And now she's just scaling in a way where she's just like boss. She gets to just like speak and lead and be this leadership coach, but she was already plugged into this network. And even if that's not the case for you, guaranteed you're probably plugged in somewhere. You have relationships, whether it's a local community, whether it's past industry that you were a part of. Like, I want you to think, where are my people that aren't social media, right? Is get visible beyond social media, which I know we've already been talking about. So get visible beyond social media. So I would say you need at least 2 non-social media ways for new people to discover you. It just helps to create a healthier business. It's more sustainable. You will have different sources for new leads. And it also helps because when people do find you or they Google your name or whatever, they're finding you on these different platforms, which is what creates the third-party credibility. So people will look, especially if you are offering something that is very premium or carries like a higher price tag, they're going to look to be like, who else has co-signed, and it doesn't even have to be this major thing. You don't need to do a TED Talk. You know what I mean? Like it could be it could be podcasts, it could be a speaking engagement. Everybody in this room can do it. It doesn't matter like what it is that you do. And also just social, like we all know, like this year, it's just going to serve its own interest, right? Like we don't know about TikTok. We just know all in Meta, people have thoughts now, and I totally get it about just like being on Meta platforms for various reasons. And just know they're all just business models and they don't care about making anybody's thing visible. They just are their job is to make money. So where I would start with this one is in terms of get visible beyond social media is look at like where are the top 3 places past clients have found you, like look at intake forms and look at like where did they actually find you? And then where else might they be? So I like to ask the question, like, where are my people at? And sometimes that can be a little bit of market research. You might ask your current clients, you might use ChatGPT, but figure out what other places are they at that you could go and build relationships with them. This is so important, especially if you have a service that benefits from in person. It either has to be delivered in person or somehow about your local community. Absolutely would recommend having some sort of like a local strategy for being visible to prospective clients. What would you recommend when most of your clients have come from word of mouth? So this is a really good question. So if most of them have come from word of mouth, I think about were they from past clients or just people who know you? Because whenever that's the case, I think whatever is being said in those conversations needs to come out in the forefront somehow. So whether it's like, what is it that they're actually saying? So whether they're willing to tell you that or not, mentors, past clients, and people who know me. Okay, so you have a strong reputation. So I think it could be something like a referral program, but it doesn't even have to be. It literally could be something where you are taking the things that are said about you and saying, is it okay if I tell a story about this? So sometimes you don't even have to name someone and say like it's a testimonial, but I think like especially if it's somebody who's experienced your work and can speak to it, asking, is it okay if I tell a story about this and you can remain anonymous? Because essentially it's kind of like whatever they're saying to an individual, could you tell stories about it in your marketing to showcase what it's like to work with you? And then if you're brand new, in many cases it really depends, because I think that whenever you're brand new, you are kind of creating your own market research. So I think like you just need iterations of whatever it is that you're putting out in the world in terms of like, if you know who you're speaking to, trying to be like, how could I be as helpful as possible to this particular audience? Imagine a certain type of person anytime you're going and creating content and you're like, how can I be a resource for this person whenever I show up? How can I be a resource for the same type of person? I think when you're brand new, who's the person you wake up and think about every day? And you serve them because that's really all I did for a really long time. Like I didn't really know my person, but I mean, I didn't know what I was going to sell, but I thought about my person. I thought about daughters of immigrants first and foremost whenever I spoke. And so I thought like, how could I share a thing with them today that can help somebody? Naturally, you will start to get reflections back from your audience being like, that's the thing that I needed. That I didn't think about before. So you start to create data, but in order to create data, you need iterations of putting things out into the world. Even for a brand new startup, literally, like if you, when I like interviewed for startups, a lot of times their answers are like, I don't know. We just want to know how you would solve it because we just need to go out and gather data. So sometimes we just have to go and gather data by iterating and putting things out into the world. So examples of, so Danny happened to lean into her strength where she already was this networking queen. So even though she was on LinkedIn, she's like, well, I love networking. I have no mind drama about it whatsoever. Other people like have these thoughts, but basically what she did was she would go on LinkedIn and she would look up like organizations that she wanted to work with or that seemed interesting, that seemed to like cross over with what she did. And all she did was like reached out and was like, hey, I want to learn more about what you guys do and how, maybe how I can support you. And she just like reached out and just did a bunch of coffee chats. And that's how she ended up with, I'm probably way oversimplifying it, but I know that's what she was doing. Blocked off some time, just sent out invitations and connections, and was landed organizational contracts in this way and new clients. And that's still part of the strategy that she's coming back to, but also pitched herself to speak. Like she's landed multi-four-figure speaking engagements, was able to leave her job a little over a year ago. And one of the things that was part of her version of success was she really wanted to travel. Like she really wanted to solo travel. And she's been doing that. And so this is an example of like booked out can look different. This isn't someone who like wanted to have like back-to-back calls throughout the week, but went to a dozen countries last year, is in Kenya right now, just came back from Antarctica, is going to go to Morocco. Like this is what she's doing. But we also were able to position her a little bit more high level as well, because sometimes so many things, but then you think you always want to be clear on like what's your highest level skill set. And sometimes it takes time. So it's like she was solving a problem for people who were looking for promotions and pivoting in their career. And that was a $2,500 offer when, oh yeah, she's in Kenya right now. And then eventually I was like, you were a VP at your company. There's very few women of color who get to that level. Do you realize when I was there, I would have loved to work with a leadership coach like you. You have to be talking about this because there are so few people in the world who can even touch you when it comes to that arena. And so sometimes we're sitting on something that we worked really hard to know. It could be life experience, right? And we discount that sometimes, but like if you went through hard shit or you earned that freaking problem that you are now working through, that is often your biggest moneymaker. So that's the difference between same offer, being able to sell a $2,500 one-on-one package to 6 to 9K and actually sell it because she's speaking to more complicated problems that a higher level client is experiencing. So that's another way that you can make more money without necessarily taking on more clients, because you are elevating your messaging and elevating who you are attracting based on looking at what's the unmet need that I can serve for a more complex audience, right? So that's another way that unmet needs and looking beyond social media for clients. And then, yeah, I loved this one about nervous to post on LinkedIn because of her job. It totally made sense. And literally like a year and a month or something like that later, she was like a LinkedIn top voice. Granted, she was on there. That doesn't just happen. Homegirl is like on freaking LinkedIn. Even when she's traveling, you would think she was home. She's not. She's like pre-scheduled her stuff. So like it definitely, it took work, but it's possible. And she's been in business for 2 years. So, and a lot of this just happened really quickly. So initially, this is back to the looking out of social media for getting booked out. Patty did have kind of 2 offers, which was like self-love coaching, marketing on Instagram, also was doing leadership coaching within organizations. Through really looking at where her results had come from, realized that her biggest opportunities were in leadership coaching. It's where she could bring all of this depth and all of this richness from her experience, and that her biggest skill was like relationship building, like deep relationship building. So we really just leaned into that. And she had so much that was already sitting there, and that now she was able to, in a way, something that it's very easy to see opportunities as like a fluke or someone else brought it to me versus like, no, nobody works with you unless you're really, really good at what you do. And so what would it look like to create demand in that way on purpose? And so now she's fully a B2B coach, business to business, does not need to post on Instagram unless she wants to share about her life or her engagement, and just repositioned her offers because we found that having split audiences just didn't make sense and it's not what she really wanted to do, and is now just really doing meaningful work with organizations, raised her prices, just all the things. And so these are all things that we're actually involved doing less in one area in order for you to deepen your relationships and your opportunities somewhere else. So this is the 3 things. I'd love to hear from these. Is there one that feels like you could more easily tap into it than the others? Like something that you're like, I know I'm not doing that and I know that I could be doing that. The making people feel seen. You know what? I feel like Yudi kind of did that a little bit. And I think we had to create opportunities. I feel like Yudi kind of did that with going into other people's group programs where it was like they had to experience her in order to understand the magic. And then they were like, you didn't have to explain anything to me. I just experienced like you guest coaching. And then a lot of people decided to like work with her based on that. So I feel like that's what it is. When you have a magic that is difficult to, it's either difficult to articulate, you can articulate it, but I think it's something very sensitive and deep within people that sometimes it's a bit like that. I know that's a little different than making people feel seen. But you also could, I feel like with making people feel seen, you also need to have interaction. So if you can think about ways to interact with your audience where they are sending you things and you are replying back, anything where there's interaction involved, I think is a way to leverage helping people feel seen. So to wrap this part up, like you don't need more volume. You do need a sustainable way to attract demand. And leading with your strengths through thought leadership. So thought leadership, literally, it's almost like a little like marketing engine that's always working for you, even when you're not posting. And that's how I've been able to grow my business and feel depressed sometimes, be a mom, all the things. And it doesn't dry up my demand and it doesn't dry up everything because it's not all hinging on me being on social media. I have multiple places that people can find out about me. And when they do find me, it doesn't sound like anything else that anybody is saying. And I'm also speaking to an unmet need in the market, not just a niche. Like I am speaking specifically to the first gen entrepreneur audience and the specific challenges that we experience in entrepreneurship. So with that being said, I want to share with y'all about how we do this in Reclamation. And then I want to open it up at the end. So I'm going to be sharing something about in person at the end. But to open up, Reclamation is the only mastermind that I know that was specifically designed around the needs of first gen and women of color entrepreneurs who want to be booked out without doing more. And I've explained a little about what I mean by that, because I think you can hear someone say like, you can attract more or make more without doing more. But I'm like, what does that mean? So this is what I mean is what I shared today. And it's high touch, it's high support. You will get thought partnership from me. You will never get a basic answer from me. You will never get a one size fits all copy paste strategy. You won't. You're going to learn how to create a strategy based on your strengths, based on what your idea of success is, based on what's worked for you in the past and just what you want in general, right? So thought leadership can become your demand engine. Like it is the thing that can be working for you that can allow you to scale without burning out. So in Reclamation, another thing that makes it different is that there are very different business models. So part of what happens is if you are in a space where everybody's kind of doing the same thing, they're all marketing and selling in the same way, everybody has the same business model, what will start to happen is all of your money-making differences, you'll start to water it down because you'll think that you have to do things the way that other people do them. It actually expands you to be in a room where there's different business models, different ways of marketing. And many of them in the group, they're all getting invited to speak. They're invited to, some of them working with organizations, not all. The ones who, you know, are kind of primed to be able to work with orgs are without having to pitch. And visibility also looks different. Some lean on networking, others on speaking, others on their content, but they all work. So you are going to refine your thought leadership. You're going to build demand using your thought leadership and create a business model that does not burn you out. So whether you have kids or you don't, or you're neurodivergent, or you're just like, I'm tired, I just want to be able to help people and still make a lot of money, but not make it my whole life, then this is the place for you. So again, there's different business models. There's no one size to marketing. It's marketing agnostic, meaning we approach marketing from visibility. Marketing is how do people find out about a thing, develop a relationship with the thing, and then say yes to it. That can look so different. And it's led by someone who can give you very specific answers, which is why I had spoken earlier about how people come to me and they're spinning out because they're very heavy with rules and like do's and don'ts. And then when they tell me, I'm like, I can see why they told you that, but that's not actually technically accurate, or it doesn't make sense for what you're doing. And I'll tell you why. So you will walk away, like at the end of the year, you are going to think differently than you did at the beginning. And you're going to know how to honestly market, how to think about marketing and selling anything just based on the things that you learn, which is essentially a space that's focused on skills, not tactics. So also designed for women of color and first gen. All of my approaches are based on running a business while you feel triggered about money, running a business while you feel guilty when you're succeeding, when you feel guilty when you have calendar space, when you naturally have a really loud inner critic, when you are, navigating stuff for your parents and like all the things is, you don't have to explain that here. The other thing that is very hard to find, I still don't think there's a lot of spaces like this, is a place that feels like a true community where people actually develop friendships. That doesn't happen because we need to feel safe to open up. We're not just going to show up and just be like, I'm going to be vulnerable, you guys. Like, I'm looking for, business friends. It really has to be earned. Like, you have to create a space where vulnerability, people feel safe, especially if you are, let's say, an eldest daughter and you're like, I can't show signs that I am vulnerable, right? So this was always so important because I think that if you join a space and you actually walk away with, and let's say if you don't have that and that your friends aren't entrepreneurs and you walk away with one friendship of a person that is in your actual text messages who cares about you as a person, that can change your life. And one of the things that I think is so beautiful about the mastermind is that especially when hard things happen, I don't know the things they don't share with me, but what the things that they do share with me, they'll sometimes tell me, I'm only telling you, and I only told so-and-so and so-and-so, and the other two people are in the mastermind. And I'm like, that's so huge that like you're telling me something vulnerable and the only other two people that you told are in the mastermind. Like that doesn't just happen. And for me, like, I don't know how I would be here if it wasn't for like me blowing up Liz and Erica's chat. Like, you know what I mean? Like I just couldn't, I need a place to go be like a needy bitch. You know what I mean? And I never ever feel like that with them. And I never have to have it together, right? So that on its own will change your life. I also allow voice memos. I don't know if like other groups allow that, but like when we can iterate so much faster. For right now, I'm not changing that. I just like the fact that you can send me messages. And I mean, my private clients can send me like telegrams. Like that's kind of something that, is like private client level, but like I would encourage like not to do that every single time, but like sometimes when we're iterating, it really helps. The way that it works is we have a milestone-based curriculum so that you know exactly what to worry about and what not to worry about when it comes to demand, booking out, or if you already are good in terms of sales, but you want it to feel more sustainable and you want to scale, or you have a team, then we have a different aspect for sustain and stabilize demand for you. So you know exactly what it is that you're going to be focusing on and what not to worry about. We also then have support in Leadership Circle. I'll talk about this, but when you book out and the next thing that you're working on isn't necessarily landing clients, we coach on something different. I'll talk to you about it after this, but it's essentially like a mastermind within the mastermind, and they're getting more support this next round. So if your problem isn't landing clients, it's maintaining the ones that you have and scaling and not overpaying your team and not being back and forth in Slack all week and all the things. I got you too. This is an entire year. I made it an entire year because I'm like, there's no way that you won't have time to really work through some things, make some decisions, shift your identity, learn skills you're always going to have, build friendships, and not feel rushed. You have an entire year on purpose. We meet every week And I will also host one-off calls like co-working calls where you can like bring something that you've been avoiding doing because you're scared, and you will get accountability on the call, or you'll send it to me and I'll give you feedback, right? If you are in leadership circle because you've booked out, we now have bi-weekly calls for the members who are already booked out and have more of like team systems, delegation, those sorts of growth challenges. So we have that along with one-on-one support from me there. So if you already are booked out and you're able to maintain that in Reclamation, you will join Leadership Circle and you would get essentially like a mastermind within a mastermind. In the future, it may be its own offer, but for right now, it's free within Reclamation. And then there's lots of different ways to get coached. So if you're busy and you don't have a lot of time, you can submit a private coaching request form. You could get documents reviewed by me. I'll send you a Loom video. We can go back and forth in Slack. And in-person events and retreats, that's going to be a focus of mine this year because I really want to bring more of my people together. And I've talked to y'all about Leadership Circle. And yes, so if this resonated with you and you have questions, I'm going to open it up to questions. If you apply, talk to you about this after this. The investment is $10K or 7 payments of $1,500. Applications close the 27th. But if you know you want to talk to me, book it by Thursday, because if you just book the call by Thursday, we can have the call next week. We can have the call after that, but just book it by Thursday in order to get the VIP day with me. If you pay in full, the VIP day can be here in San Francisco. If it's a payment, if you join and it's a payment plan, we'll have the VIP day virtually. My team will reach out to schedule it. But this is where we're actually going to go and do the work we talked about today. You're going to do it with me. I'm going to send you an intake form. We're going to get, the information that we need so that you can walk away knowing what your strengths are, like where your lead gen sources are, get clear on your thought leadership, all those things. So you don't have to figure it out all on your own. So that's the Book Out Without Burnout VIP day. So book that by Thursday. If you're thinking about it, we're going to map out your goals. We're going to spot the gaps in your visibility and your marketing. We're going to get clear on your thought leadership, and we're going to come up with like an identity plan if you book by Thursday. So if we get, let's say 9, but maybe I would do it if it's a little bit sooner. So when you book your call with me, if you think you might want to go, let me know, because I've not been able to get this out of my head. I know that I want to do this. It's so powerful. Sayulita, May 15th and 16th, which are Thursday and a Friday, a retreat. I already know what the location is going to be. I'm down to 2 locations. Essentially, it would be a blend of live coaching. My clients told me in Mexico, they're like, we don't want to see slides. We just want to get coached by you. I was like, great, let's show up and get coached, make some decisions. Then we'll kind of host some discussions, masterminding and breakout sessions. So we'll kind of like introduce the topic, you go and like you peer coach, and we'll talk about visibility. We'll talk about lead generation, thought leadership, identity, mindset, confidence, imposter syndrome, whatever, is coming up. I will base it off of what's coming up. And it'll be 500 additional to go. But for 2 full days of being coached, being with community, being with your mastermind sisters, being in Sayulita, it's such a beautiful place. Anytime I've ever gone, I've felt healed. And it's just such a beautiful place. And the place that I'm looking at is like right on the ocean. And so, yeah, essentially you would just put down it's almost like buying a ticket for like a group VIP like weekend, right? And it's going to be clients only. So the application, when you go there, the application is there on the Reclamation page. My team just put it live. And then just make sure if you apply by Thursday, then you could just pick whatever date works. I have availability through, I think, the first week of March. We've got spots available. So back to this. And then I'm going to open it up to questions because we've gotten this. The milestone-based curriculum. Yeah, we've talked about this. Multiple ways to get coached. Book Out with our Burnout by Thursday. All right. We made it to the end. Is the retreat only May 15th to 16th? Yes, that particular retreat would probably be the 15th to 16th unless it gets like booked up, but 15th to 16th is the days that I'm looking at, and a San Francisco based meetup as well. So that if you join, we would send out a poll because I wanted to do a more immediate, like lower key one where you can just come to the city and get coached and make decisions and meet whoever's here. I got some Bay Area people here. But there will be other opportunities as well if those 2 don't. Because I'm like, we could look at other weekends. This is why I haven't booked it yet.
Don't change it because of that. I'm old too, girl. EDC is like one of the largest festivals in like the entire world. It's a rave festival.
It's like rave? Okay, I was like, is that the rave thing?
Yeah, I think it's second to Lollapalooza.
I'm like, do my clients go to EDC?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't go either.
I don't know.
I'm being
Well,
dragged there against my will.
we'll see. Because I was like, it can't be the following weekend because it's too close to Memorial Day and flights start to go up. So it could be earlier, but I also wanted to give people enough time to like book their flights and stuff. And then after Memorial Day weekend, it's June, and some people with kids, their kids come out of school and it starts to get trickier. So it's a little like, if anything, I might move it to earlier in the week or something, but we'll see. So TBD, but basically by next week, there'll either be a decision or I'll provide some alternate dates and then we'll figure out what works. That's honestly why I haven't booked it. I just want to make it happen if possible in May. So with that being said, thank you guys for hanging out. What questions do you have for me about what I shared about reclamation? Like, I want you to give me your questions. Kira knows because we joked about this where I was just like, throw me all the questions. I welcome all of them because you should have them. And I will do my best to just tell you straight up.
Sorry, I'm going to be super self-centered. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
So I just want to know because I've been interested for a while, and I think that there's definitely an appeal to working with you because I think there's a lot of things that we can relate to, or at least myself, I can relate to, being first generation American and so on and so on. But, I think the part where I'm sort of like unsure about is because I'm in a place where I want to change, and my career has been on one thing, and I think you kind of know what my career path is or what I've built. But now it's like I have a voice and I need to find my voice in another sector. So I'm trying to figure out like, is this going to be that plan? Like, am I going to be able to figure out what that's going to look like for me? And because I'm sort of like, I don't want to say I'm over my business, but I'm moving past what I've built already. And so it's sort of like, I want to move into the space of more like speaking engagements, more leadership, more of that. But I still feel like I've been doing this for so long that I still feel like I don't have like something to sell, if that makes sense.
It sounds like, I'm going to reflect back what you shared. It sounds like you've built a really, really strong business brand, and your personal brand around the business brand is very much like leaning towards your business. So it's like your personal brand and the business brand have a Venn diagram and they're heavily overlapped. And what you are wanting is for that Venn diagram to not be so overlapped and actually have a personal brand and speaking engagements and be known for something bigger than your business. And do you have an idea already of like, what is it that you want those things to be, or do you need help figuring it out? Either of those is fine because you can still figure that out in the program, but
Yeah,
just
I think I do. I mean, it is centered around money, around women and money and business, and just the different stages that we go through. I know you touch on it quite a bit about just the changes as a woman that we go through in life and how difficult it is when it comes to money. Understanding there's a component that I feel is sort of missing, that it's hard, again, putting it into words, the thing. It's like, it's past emotion because there's a lot of feelings, right? But then there's also like practical skills that I think we don't learn. And so I'm a tax accountant, guys. So the thing that I think that sometimes is like very difficult for me to put into words is the fact that there's feelings and there's also practical things that we need to instill in ourselves in order to be able to work through some of that emotional trauma that comes with money and feeling like we're not making enough. And I've gone through those things and I still do, right? Like,
Yeah.
you could hit those targets, but then you're just like, where the hell's my next, paycheck coming from? Or, right away it starts feeling scary again because you're just like, oh crap, like did good, but then what's going to happen next month, right? So immediately goes into that. And I know that you definitely understand this, is that when you're, not that I'm a single parent, but when a lot of heavily relies on you. I am a parent, I'm a divorcee, but I have a partner now and all these things, but a lot of it still relies, like marketing and a lot of things still rely on me. So I think that's always like really heavy for me to like carry, but I want to speak on those things, but I'm like trying to find my voice again in that space, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Is it right now that I don't know if this is kind of one of the things that you're asking, it may or may not be. is like that it's important to you to be in a space that isn't obviously just talking about the steps or, the strategies or the skills, but also that like is able to hold space for the mindset, the triggers, the nuances, the fears that are going to come along with doing the steps. And it also sounds like there's a part of you that like, I don't know if the second part is almost that you're wanting to be able to speak more about those things. Tell me like if there's something there.
And I think it's like drawing it out of me. I don't know if any of you guys struggle with this, but it's like drawing out what the product is, if that makes sense, because I still don't know what the sale is going to be. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know if the sale is the speaking. I don't know if the sale is being on podcasts, because I've done podcasts and I've done these types of things, but I don't know what the sale is. And I don't know necessarily that coaching is maybe what I prefer, but it's sort of like, where am I going to make the money? I guess if I lay it out plainly.
I know what it is. I think it's personal brand. So, because personal brand is like a house, like a personal brand is an asset. So really what I don't use these terms, but I feel like what I help people build, every entrepreneur, is to build a lucrative personal brand that's based on their thought leadership, which means I have this profession and I do this thing, and that's not the only thing that I'm known for. So it kind of allows you to bring different identities to that personal brand. I look at it like the personal brand is the house, and then you have a room, a giant room that's your business, but you're like, there's this other part of me that like I don't really talk about, and I don't want to have to hide those things. And I also don't want to have to figure them all out now either, because when you have a really strong personal brand, you get to evolve, you get to change, you get to bring different parts of yourself. And then the money can come in different ways with a strong personal brand. It can be things like speaking or consulting. It can come in different ways, but the personal brand really, not everybody has like a very strong front-facing personal brand, but I think in your case, because you do have a front-facing brand, that's kind of more of what I would see. Is you posting things that are more of a departure from your professional identity.
Yeah, that is definitely what I'm seeking. And I guess maybe I'm just having a hard time conceptualizing that a personal brand is associated with making money. So
well, I think that's part of what would have to come from that is what are other ways of monetizing the things that you know, besides just getting paid to speak, because I think you can get paid to speak, but I would think of what are other things that you can do with the things that you know that aren't your business right now. So that's one of the things that I would say. And so part of the fact of folks in Reclamation having different business models is like they monetize the things that they know in different ways. And that's part of what they figure out in the mastermind is it speaking? Is it consulting? Is it, facilitating? Is it just different things where you're bringing the things that you know to the table? So, and I don't know whether for you, it would be a super big departure. Like, do you not want to talk about tax accounting at all? Are you just like, I want to chuck it out and do a completely different thing?
Yeah, in a way, yes. I mean, it's still going to be very much embedded into my life because, I've been doing it for so long. But I think there is a sense of me that wants it to just have, it's like, that's its house. And now Damari is this person and is talking about this person, because for a really long time, I wanted my focus to be more so about women, money, and business, and a mix of all those things. Yes, tax is a component, but tax is just too complicated to like really dive into. And I feel like I have the tendency of starting to get into that again, but I'm trying to steer away from it because it's like, it's just a whole other thing on its own.
So what I would say, this is honest answer. I think that if you wanted to do a complete departure from what you were doing and like, let's say create a career from being a speaker, that would probably be a different like skill set. That I think what in Reclamation, what we do is we help with like kind of what's a natural extension of what you're doing that isn't just your offers, right? Just what's a natural extension of what you're doing, but we are kind of leveraging like adding your story on top of your expertise, your thought leadership on top of your story, and then becoming known for that. But it sounds like in your case, you may want to come up with some other thing that you're selling off the back of that, if that's what you want to do. And if it's purely like a speaking career, that's probably a little less aligned with Reclamation, because Reclamation would bring visibility to the things that you have and existing things you have, and maybe things that are spin-offs from that, versus like a thing that's completely different from that, if that's what it is that you're looking for. So that's one thing that I would say. Petra, hi.
Hi. Hi from Sydney, everyone. I was actually at a gym class and I'm currently in the Apple store. So hence why I look like a bit of a beetroot.
Oh no.
Mariella,
Hi.
tops matching my face. Good morning, good evening to everyone. This has been so magically real and fresh for me because Mariella, just for like a 2-second background, I started following you through another account and listening to your podcast about when your journey started in London and with your daughter and your partner, and then you moved back to the US. That's what really got me, because I had something really similar happen. I mean, I'm a first generation, my family background's Macedonian. So between Greece, Albania, Serbia, my parents are like these typical high achieving immigrants. I'm the first of 4 kids. I'm an attorney, but I lived in Germany for 10 years. I'm the eldest of 4. I've got my 2 sisters, my brother, children born in Germany and lived in Berlin and worked as a lawyer. I kind of did like all those, multi-hyphenate type things like media, TV reporting. I retrained as a journalist. I did a lot of speaking and facilitation. Then coming back to Australia, I feel like where you really got me in this particular workshop that you've just hosted on visibility. I feel invisible in the country that I was actually born and raised in and did all my education in university, and trying to understand, and this is what really kind of I think you captured really clearly, Damari, about how do you monetize yourself? I've really been, my core themes have always been like women, gender justice. I did a lot of human rights work and advocacy, tech, startups. So I crossed all of those bridges. I'm kind of like the glue that would, or the river that flows between all of the bridges.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I feel what you're offering is so unique because it captures exactly like that invisibility, how to make invisibility visible when someone's come from one continent back to the homeland, so to speak, and reestablishing themselves. And I want to, focus on this new identity. And I think the 12-month process that you put forward is really something that I haven't had. It's going to, embed into what I'm trying to build. But obviously Australia is very different to Germany. And I think part of my learning has been, how do I set myself up for a career that's almost borderless? Why have I been so focused on Sydney when actually I've got connections and, work that I could do anywhere. So this is my kind of query on how, like where to from here. And I'd love to explore this further.
What is it right now that you offer, like in terms of monetization and like offers?
Yes. Okay. So I have done a workshop training around like design thinking. I've hosted events, but it's been so piecemeal. And I mean, this is a space where I feel really honest and can tell you all, like it's very inconsistent because it's largely driven by, being the primary carer for my kids. I am, also divorcee like Damari, but also repartnered, but we don't yet live together. So my main source of income has been, through teaching. I have part-time university work, but that's very seasonal. So in the background, as my side hustle, I've been really trying to build up my speaking facilitation stuff, but it is so inconsistent.
Okay. And who are you, the speaking and facilitation work that you're doing now, is it the same types of organizations that hire you?
Okay. So it varies. Probably that's
I always
why
look at like, are you known for something and do you have demand on something where we can turn that up? Versus when you say scattered, it might be scattered, known for different things versus scattered opportunities.
Yes. So, okay, great example. Just before Christmas, my old university asked me to come back to give a keynote at an alumni function on, changing careers, changing continents, creating your own opportunities, So that's kind of like the thread of what I'm doing. Academics, university setting, law firms. I've hosted a couple of my own smaller events where I've talked on these themes, women, moms, switching, new identity, changing things. How do you position yourself? So I've kind of really tried to explore that, but it's probably my own lack of the marketing, or just what you really identified is I'm scared to position myself as a thought leader. So I'm bombarding socials and it's like really having zero effect.
And do they need to be in person?
The events that probably they don't. I'm just I haven't created a product like an online school or an online course that probably would fill that gap. You're right.
Yeah, that would be my next question. So what I would say is like with Reclamation in particular, where I've seen the best results is even when people have different offers, they kind of like they've served enough folks through that they kind of know what it is, and they either need to decide I'm going to let go of this and double down on this, or I have this offer suite, but I'm going to just refine it because it doesn't really work that well together. It's sounding like it's a little bit in between where you've got something that you've sold and delivered, but it needs to be refined. And then you might have to build something off the back of that so that it's beyond facilitation.
Yeah.
So that there's like another step for them to go to, because sometimes my clients will be selling one thing, but then there's nowhere for them to go afterwards. So I would be curious. I have more questions for you about that. So I would say that like, in order for me to say, oh, Reclamation would be a good fit, I feel like I'd need to know more about that. But either way, I would be able to tell you, here's what I would see as next. Does this sound like what you're needing clarity on? And then kind of figuring it out from there.
Yes, I agree with that approach. I think it's really sensible. And I love that you've individually, it's like you can kind of just see through this screen and the phone and beyond all the, the borders that we're kind of all in different locations. So I really welcome that. And I definitely love the fact that, you're not putting that pressure, or you don't have that expectation that everyone's got to come into this with like $1 million businesses, because I'm certainly not at that stage. Like I've been there before.
Yeah.
So I'm at the point where I'm rebuilding from now, like back to like, it feels like I'm starting from nothing again.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at,
I love helping folks rebuild. I would say that I'm there. I think now, especially because this is like the 5th round of Reclamation, I've never been more clear of where I'm like, if you're in this place, I can see it already. Like I can typically already see the next steps. I still feel like we could sit down on a call and I can help.
Yes.
We can talk about that. And I would tell you, like, it seems to make sense for the space, or it doesn't, because when it works, it really clicks. Like this is why the results have been so incredible. But at the same time, I have a responsibility to be like, does it make sense for here? And if it were, this is what your experience would be. Here's what I would see you use the program for, versus if it isn't a fit, or if it's one-on-one coaching, or in different capacities where it's like monthly calls or bi-weekly calls. So but yeah, I would say I want to learn more about it. It's always like, good. I have more questions, so we should definitely chat.
Okay, gracias. Thank you.
Welcome. All right. I love that you guys are hanging out with me. Any other questions about Reclamation, deciding whether, I just want you to have what you need to decide whether you want to apply. Because then when you apply, then we have a conversation, and then based on that, we will know more. I'll be able to tell you, here's what I see. Here's why I think it's a fit and how it's a fit, or here's why I don't necessarily think it's a fit, but here's what I do think is a fit. I will always bring that to calls, but I just want you all to have the answers that you need to decide whether just to book the call, and then we can make the decision on the call. And I also have just questions I can share that I've been asked in the past, if it's helpful. Let me know.
I have a question for you. Well, maybe other people have it. So do you have clients that like have a difficult time when they are like overlapped like this? So I've seen some of your clients that work with like LinkedIn, and they're presenters and they do business to business. Because I think there's always that like approach of the first need, and you've talked about this before, of your first need being money. And
meaning like mine, like my first need, like I need to make sure that I'm
no, but it was like, no, you were saying something about like, it's hard because like whenever like you want to do something you want to do, but the first need is always the money. So supporting yourself, and kind of how are you able to break away from one to the other, right? Because I'm just thinking, again, myself, sorry, that it's sort of like, not that my business is still, doing its thing, but I need to be able to supplement, or I need to be able to do this other thing because I'm no longer doing like contracted CFO work. And it's like, that's my first immediate need, right? So like, that's my tendency to be like, okay, I need to pursue this because that's what's going to fill, what I need right now. But
Yeah.
you transition from that like first immediate need to, going into actually, again, monetizing. So I think a lot of us maybe have that same question, right? Like,
It sounds like this is almost a similar way that like a career pivot would be, like even though this is your business, where we almost always want to craft like what is a transferable skill that meets a current need. And while the transferable skill that meets a current need might not be the thing that you ultimately want to do, I feel like the more of a departure it is in terms of like you wanting to figure out what can your personal brand be and like how do you want to serve people, that the next logical step would be something that's maybe a little bit more of a departure. So I mean, I'm making it up, but it's like if it were consulting a certain type of business owner who is pivoting and needs XYZ. Like it might be something like that versus a far departure, because that's what I'd be able to see for you, where you're also like, if I'm going to spend time doing this, I want to make sure that this is also something that I can sell, because it's not that much of a departure. It's kind of like I'm here and I'm taking 2 steps over to the left.
yeah. Yeah, because I could see that like being like steps, you know what I mean? Like if it's not, like you said, like too far of a departure from where you are at, and you could kind of present something in the next 2 steps that'll at least bring you money or bring your, what you need right at this moment. And then from there sort of inch it towards maybe, I guess, the complete pivot.
Yeah, and I think that that's how it would work without you like compromising too much of your time or income. So I just don't, it's not that here's the thing. If you need the money, I don't suggest jumping too many steps. I'm always like, let's make sure your money is okay. Let's look at what is the recurring revenue that you want to bring in. And in order for you to hold your hand over here to nurture something and build something, does that mean you need to drop something or reduce your capacity or your focus? I just want to make sure you're good, because I always have to do that. I'm like, I can't just be like, here's the best way that I look at it is if I didn't need, let's say if I had a partner who had a full-time income and my money was just bonus, I think that I would be able to take bigger risks that were much more future payoff versus now payoff. So I think that every person is an individual in that regard of like, it may be that sometimes I'm working with clients and I'm like, it's 80% now, 20% in the future. And we're working on, let's balance it out, but let's not do too much, because I want to make sure you're good. And I don't want you dysregulated, thrown off. I don't want you to stop anything that is working. I want us to shift on over here and then learn, figure out what could that be, and then keep building your brand. Because what's going to continue to happen no matter what is when you are putting out, if you're building more of a personal brand and not everything is related to the business, that in itself is going to be a process for you. To be like, I'm speaking about different topics. I actually am going to bring different expertise to the table that doesn't just have to do with, let's say, tax, like accounting and taxes. Like that's going to feel like an adjustment. So that's what I would say is like, I wouldn't do the big departure just because I wouldn't recommend it. And it's also not in like my wheelhouse to do like a complete rebrand of a person. And I just want you to make sure you're getting paid.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I want to make sure I'm getting paid too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I'm like, girl, I know. We gotta figure stuff out.
Yeah, exactly.
So even for my clients who can take the bigger risks, I'm like, that's great if they can. We always assess capacity and we assess like risk tolerance and risk ability to whether or not they really want to nurture some future vision. However, the shorter steps in between, I feel like you'll get to 10 step faster or step 10 faster if you hang out in step 2, 3, 4 instead of trying to get there. Because what winds up happening is you iterate, you get data, you learn, and then step 10 gets a lot clearer. So I still feel like the shift over is probably still the best move of the way that I would do things. But
yeah, I think I probably do have the tendency of just saying like, I don't want to crawl, I'm ready to run. But so makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are all things, it's all good to know too, because those are all things that we can talk about on the call. And then the one thing that I will always do on any discovery call is like, let me ask you lots of questions based on the things you share. I'm immediately like, okay, this is interesting. I'm going to ask more about this. I'm going to ask more about this. And at the end, it's almost like what I'm gathering from you is puzzle pieces that might not feel clear in your mind. But by the end of the call, my job is to take those puzzle pieces and say, is this what it is that you're wanting? Here's how I see this. here, how does this sound to you, so that I can kind of build those out so that you can see, here's the next steps that I would see. And those may or may not match up, with Reclamation, and that's fine, but that is my intention for any call, so that you still walk away feeling like I'm helping you to extract what the next steps are and whether or not that matches up.
Sounds good. All right, guys, I took up all your time.
No, you're all good. I'm glad you asked. Any other questions you haven't asked already? I already know who's not going to ask questions, because this is my clients who are hanging out with me. But I'm glad you guys are here. Or if there's any questions that are like,
wait, so let's hear from your clients.
Spot.
What do they feel they extracted out of their time? Like what?
Yeah. I was like, this is all the case studies I shared with you.
Any takers?
It's like they're putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that y'all shared your case studies. All right, Kira.
I'll go. Kira.
Hey. Hi.
Thanks, Kira.
So I'm Kira. Nice to meet y'all. I'm super familiar with the case studies because I was one, and then I also helped Mariela write all of them.
Yeah.
I'm also a little bit like Mariela as well, where I thrive off of questions and answers. So I'm better suited if you have a direct question for me, but I will just kind of, and then I can answer anything you have, but I'll just kind of give like a quick 2-minute intro. So I'm an agency owner. I have a content agency, marketing agency. We have 2 core offers. One is consulting, and then one is done for you content. And when I worked with Mariela back in February, I had I want to say maybe 4 or 5 offers. And I was speaking to a clientele that I thought I really, really wanted to reach, and selling an offer that that I thought was going to be like the offer for me, and then come to find out that I was solving an unmet need, but I was in the wrong, I was speaking to the wrong client, or I was solving an unmet need, but I was ignoring my current demand. And I was in a, and I was in a situation that, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Damari. Yes. Okay. I was in a similar situation with you. We don't have kids or anything like that, but I also was like, I need money. I need money now. And I don't have time to transition into a new market. So I need to make an offer that is going to still solve an unmet need, but then sell to where my current demand is. And I need to do that quickly, because I can't keep going on these no sell months with me trying to reach this different audience. So, after months of kind of gathering that data, I remember having multiple conversations with Mariela where we really worked through what, even in all of the seasons that I wasn't getting sales for one offer, what was working. And we figured out what was working. And then by the time I launched that offer, I had doubled my income and hit my highest revenue month. We welcomed 10 clients in Q4. So it was a lot of reiterating, a lot of assessing what wasn't working, what was. I showed up, anyone in here who's who knows me knows I came to every call with notes, feedback, Slack messages, voice notes. It was a constant going back and forth process. But this space really created, this was really a safe space, both with Mariela and with the group, to really continue to reiterate over and over again, and just have resource and accesses to talk to the girls and get feedback. And so all of those things, I think, accelerated the process. I probably would have been going crazy if I had been trying to do all of that on my own. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Okay. Yeah, I did see your story. I think you were one that I was looking at, because you have an agency that you were already doing, and you weren't I guess that pivot, right? And so I feel the same boat in that sense, where it's okay, but I don't want to go. I want to go. Yes, there's a part of me that wants to go into this other space, but I know that, the immediate need is one thing. And so it's figuring out, though, how can I acquire, or how can I attract, or, make it into an offer that doesn't necessarily have to do with what we already provide.
Yeah, exactly what it is she said she would help you do on a call is literally exactly what happened with me. Because I was like, this is what it is that I wanted. Yeah, I was in the same boat as you.
Because I think there
Okay.
was like an aspirational bridge of like, there's a thing, and you could help them. That's the thing, is like you could help
Yeah.
them do things, but then
How
there's
can you
almost
not?
like, what does it mean to sell? Like, what are people willing to pay you for now that you also want to deliver? And it's like, it was almost like as soon as you tapped into that, people were just like, yes, this is exactly what I'm needing. And you didn't have to like convince them, but you still got to bring the unmet need, which was data, to that offer.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Just in a completely different way than I thought I would.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's like there's still something there. And I was like, no, we still stand by like that was the unmet need, but I think it was like an aspirational need versus current demand. I love what you said about meeting current demand.
Yeah.
And then the thing is like it doesn't mean that you can't do anything after that. You can iterate, but you got to stabilize. It's almost like I think about if you're crossing a river and you're on rocks, you're just like, let me make sure that I'm stable before I go. And instead of trying to hop across and your ass falls in the water, like we're just trying to make sure that you stabilize so before you like add too many, variables or pivots.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you guys have any questions for me directly, I'm happy to answer, but that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Thanks, Kara.
Yeah.
You've already done 1 year? You've done 2 years?
Yeah, one. Yeah, I did one and I went through all the kinks and this is my year of like fully stabilizing. We're doubling down on everything that worked last year. And
How's it going so far?
we just put the finishing
Problems.
touches on my idea. Literally in today's earlier call with Mariela, I was like, but one offer is off to the races and it's in a really, really great place. I'm in a season now where I now have to update the systems to hold the demand that it is that I'm pushing for. So that's been the conversation that me and Mariela have been having, is that like the current team that got me here is no longer the team that can help get to where it is that I need to go. So we're making team hires. We're talking about system updates. We are talking about, now that this one is up and breezy, what's going to happen with some of the other demand that I'm getting, which is for my consulting offer. How do I start welcoming that in now that I have my content retainer off the ground? So yeah, we're definitely getting ready for season 2.
Yeah, sounds good. I know it's difficult because I have like a lot of overhead too, like just with my tax business and all this stuff. So it like feels like, okay, what, you know what I mean? Like I need to generate something that's on my own of the work that I was doing before. And if I don't, if I don't figure out what it is that I'm going to be offering, then I have to go back to almost like finding a job in a sense. Like,
yeah. Do you have an agency?
Yeah, well, yeah, we have a tax
Okay.
Tax firm. So we have a tax firm, and it does what it does. Of course, I'm in tax season right now, so that sometimes is a hesitation because I'm like in the middle of that, and I do need more connection, because if it's like my own, like if it's at my own pace, sometimes I just kind of ignore it. So, it has to be like I have to be working steadily on something. But I do contracted work outside of tax season. So, but I'm just trying to not do that anymore, because now it just feels like I'm doing it because I feel that need of like security in a sense, right?
Yeah.
So it's that, and it's hard. It's tough to talk to people about that, because it's like, oh, you have a tax business, and I developed another agency for bookkeeping, and I want to get that off the ground too. But it's like, okay, do I put my focus on that, grow that, and let that run and make its money? Or do I go back to now selling business to business so that I can do more contracted work again? Or what, you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like I have many ideas to kind of go with.
What does your season 2 look like? I know for me as another agency owner, mine was like, because my content retainer has people, and it's fully staffed, I wanted another offer that was all me, that I could hold on to like 90% profit.
Exactly.
So
you said it right there. And see, a lot of people don't get that. It's like, the firm has its thing, but there's a lot of overhead. There's
a lot of overhead. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot
and
of moving
the
pieces.
money, I feel like I'm just working just to pay for the business. Like I'm just like, that's why, oftentimes I go to do contracted work, because I'm just like, at least I get to keep my money,
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I feel that. Yeah. This is a great space to have those conversations for sure. Reclamation would definitely be a good place for that.
Yeah. And I think about how especially when there's different things that you could potentially be selling, it's kind of like how stable or how, is that income, like looking at the recurring revenue that's coming from that and possibly making that feel like it's running a little better, even if you have higher overhead in it. Because what I don't want you to do is take your eye off of something that the business is already doing well in order to build a consulting offer if there's things that kind of need to be tweaked within that. But we also want to look at what are some high ROI, like high profit ways to sort of monetize the things that you know that maybe aren't a forever thing, but are something that is just a very clear like a branch off of the tree, you know?
Like a temporary, like you said, like to get it to here and then kind of move on.
Yeah, just to, because I mean, I think about that also could just be a thing that you're just like, all right, if I have those opportunities and it's just not a forever decision, but it's bringing your reserves up because it's mostly profit, then do that. What I don't want is for a part of the business that's an integral part of the business that actually needs, I don't know what.
Yeah, me. No, so right now, yeah, luckily the firm is running on its own because my partner runs for the most part, most of it. I step in during tax season to, do all the other stuff as well. But then afterwards, it kind of leaves us. But as you're in San Francisco, it's expensive. So everything's expensive. So it's just like, like Kira said, it's like I'm trying to build something. So the other agency, I have the bookkeeping pros. And that was another one that I was thinking like, okay, do I grow this particular agency again? I could have minimal or like smaller, bigger margins just because I could essentially not have as much overhead since I already have some stuff. But it's like, okay, but then I have to grow that, stabilize it, keep it.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, what's going to bring me more money if I do my external contracted work? That's going to bring me more money than me trying to grow this agency, grow it again, right? Grow a different branch of what we do. A lot of stuff to think about, but I definitely need like help.
Like you want to be able to bring all of your offers now, like essentially all of the different, they're all offers, but just like all the different ways that the brand's monetize, looking at, okay, what's the offer? What are you charging for it? What's the profit margin? What does it take to deliver it? Because in some cases, what it takes to deliver it needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
In terms of that. And then it's almost like you're building, I don't want to say like a house of cards, but you know how like you can't build the house of cards up if like the foundation isn't stable, then we're actually figuring out what's the foundation because that's what's going to allow you to do the next thing. What could be the bread and butter? Let's solidify the bread and butter, which is why I say like, what's peace and profit? Like, let's do that, make sure that you've got that, and then figure out what's the next thing on top of that. But sometimes you do have to bring the whole
because like
thing.
because like Kira, I'm looking at your comment. It's like that. It's like, okay, like coaching can bring about a certain amount, but then as you guys know, it's like you have to sell it time, month after month. You have to make sure that keeps going. And then there's a container that, right now I'm not sure, there's an emotional container attached to it. And I'm not sure that I'm all the way like ready to offer the emotional container. So that's why it's like, okay, again, going back to like, what's going to bring me the best margin for my work?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, but that would be part of the questions that I have. And maybe we could talk about that on the call too, is just like, if I can look at like, and not that we could go super deep on a call in terms of like problem solving, because I really want to I just want to actually look at, these are the things that I would bring to the mastermind that I want clarity on so that I can tell you, okay, based on that, here's what I would be able to help you with. But like, even just with like the example that Kira gave, like I was looking at offers and then in some cases being like, we were almost problem solving it from the perspective of like, okay, if it's costing you this much to deliver this offer, does it need to be that way? Why is it this way? Do you want to keep offering this? So sometimes we're looking at all of it. Like we're looking at operational expenses. We're looking at, is this actually an offer that you want to grow? Could it be streamlined? And especially if you have multiple things, it might just be like, what's the most stable, profitable, or at least the most stable. Let's not disrupt that. Even if the profit margin is lower, because that feels like it's more stable. And then looking at what are the different things you're currently offering and then things potential on top of that. So it looks like it's multi-layered, but I think for sure something we should talk through. I might even, before we talk, I might have just like some pre-questions of like things to bring to the call so that I could kind of give you a good assessment.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you guys. Patty, I'm not sure if she worked with you too.
Yeah, hi. I'm Patty.
Hi.
I'm a leadership coach. I'm a little bit under the weather, but yeah, I came in and I had some like contracting consulting work. I come from nonprofits, but I was in nonprofits. I did DEI work in government, and then I worked on Broadway for a little bit. And at the same time, while I was doing that, I was building like a life and like wellness coaching business. And then I went full time in 2023 before I joined and got, I think it was like one contract. And I was in a similar kind of, I was like asking myself these questions of like, what do I want to focus on? And like for me, I just kind of went back into the old relationships that I had. A lot of the like people who were in nonprofits then went into philanthropy and they were funding coaching for their people. And so when I was looking at whether to say yes to an opportunity, because I think you mentioned that like sometimes you contracting work when you're not in tax season. For B2B, it's for me, it's more like, okay, if I say yes to this opportunity, what opportunities is that going to open me up for in the future? Whereas something like personal coaching, it's like I have to sell over and over because like even with an individual person, like yeah, they might renew or resign, but like you don't really deepen your relationships one-on-one the same way you do with another business. And I'll even say like I said yes to a consultancy that's like slightly outside of what I usually do because I wanted to deepen my relationship with that particular client. And it's like gonna put me in front of other people within their field. So like I wanted to be a little bit more strategic about like what I say yes to and kind of the opportunities that come up. But again, it's like one just like additional consideration.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many variables to it, to it all with when you're considering the consideration, when you're thinking about the consideration, it's like there's so many different variables of like, okay, is this going to be good future wise? Right. Again, like the ROI on a short period of time. I think sometimes because I branched out three things. And the third one was the SOS CFO. And that's the one that in my head brings me the most money because I can go into a company, help them fix what they need to fix, help them fix their accounting departments and this, that, the other. And essentially that's what I've been doing in my contracted work. The issue that I often get though is that then the relationship turns into like, it's really hard for them to let me go in a sense. And so the relationship turns into like, no, we want to keep this person like long-term versus like, let this be a contract. This is what I'm going to do for this short period of time. And so I just started, like I hired someone to do then stuff like that. But I've thought about that, like, okay, maybe this is a branch where I can start actually monetizing and getting businesses to do that. But it's further away from, it's consistent with what I'm doing, but a little bit further away from like speaking and talking about like being first generation, talking about money and the changes that women go through. So that's where I'm just like, okay, do I, pursue it? No, yes. So yeah, I
just had a thought about how sometimes the biggest opportunities that you have actually don't rely on your personal brand at all, so that you may not actually have to choose because they may be relationship based, where all you have to do is like look at who's you've already worked with or who's in your network and they're not caring like what's in your personal brand. And that doesn't mean that you can't still do those things. But what it might mean is that you are being asked to speak on things that are crossing over between being first gen and the work that you do. And it's just like to build up your experience and almost like credibility, like as a speaker, that you just get used to speaking on that. Meanwhile, typically your lowest hanging fruit is just like people. They're just like there. It's already the people who've like paid you in the past or are in your network, and it's going to be a very unsexy way that you end up working with them.
Yeah. And I think that that's, obviously probably from my industry, just seeing things kind of black and white. I know that we can be one and, not one or. But it is one of those things that sometimes it's like, okay, if I attach myself to this and commit to like the SOS CFO, then I have to like focus and only, give myself to that. Or it's like, okay, if I commit to the bookkeeping pros, then I have to like focus and make sure I solely commit to that. And it's just, yeah, there's been just a lot of variables in my head, but I'm just sort of like I feel like I'm out of ideas. I feel like I'm just sort of like,
I think
okay,
it's always a good when you've been thinking about it yourself that you just that's what ends up happening
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
You have to
It's
bring
like
it.
I'm just going in my same circle. Yeah.
All of the variables end up bringing you kind of back to like square one sometimes. So I think that the being able to bring that and then say, okay, if you have something that you can monetize that you can make more money at, it doesn't require you marketing or changing your personal brand. It really just requires you tapping into where you are, looking at what could your profit look like if it was coming from a little bit dialing up here. Like what might that look like? Because sometimes that's what we have to do is say, okay, I could bump my profit up by X amount if I were to take on, 2 more contracts here. And then what would that actually cost me and my time to deliver it? And what would that then free me up or fund my ability to be able to do these other things?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's like we're kind of always making interim decisions, to be honest. It's funny because like Kira, when we were talking about your hire, and I was like, okay, sometimes you're making a decision and you're like, and I'm doing this because I know that it has a secondary purpose in helping me make money in another area or freeing up my capacity in another area. And I think just being clear on what that is, you're always iterating, but I think it's just knowing why you're doing the thing that you're doing. So yeah, that's what I would say is that I think there's, no matter what, it's going to be an iteration, but I think that I can see where you're just like, there's so many variables and that makes it feel overwhelming.
It does, because I'm just like, okay, what do I pursue, But it's
Yeah.
like, I'm really just now with the overhead and everything, like,
Where do I begin? Basically.
yeah, at this point, it's sort of like, okay, at this point, I just need to make money. Like,
And
I just,
honestly, what I say is like, if there's something that is a more consulting based and it can pay you and you ain't got to pay nobody, like go do that. Know that
yeah.
you don't need to love it. You just need to be good at it. You don't need to go
Yeah.
market. You don't need to go do some stuff. Just like
Yeah, which
me
that's
my
what,
time.
I mean, that's what I'm great at. But sometimes, when it comes to like this financial aspect of things, a lot of times people, it's like harder to get hired because oftentimes they want you to be an employee and they see
Oh,
that as, because you're dealing with finances and financials. But there's a really heavy need for, medium-sized businesses that grow really fast but don't have the proper accounting structure, or they want to hire, like, they want to implement like remote workers, like, and I'm talking more like overseas, but they don't know where to start, or they feel kind of hesitant, or what that's going to look like,
sometimes they want to do this is one thing with companies, they want that because that's what they know. So I think when you come in and you're just like, here's how you work with me, then it's a little different. But I think companies will always prefer an employer-employee relationship because it's what's most familiar with them and they get more control over the work. So I just think that if you've already done it in a contractor capacity, obviously it shows that you can do that. But I think it does mean like, here's how I work with you, here's how I help you, and here's my parameters of my work so that you don't get roped into what you mentioned earlier around like, they don't want you to leave, things like that. So it's almost
yeah, because you do get sucked in. I mean, it just sort of happens. One thing happens or another, and then it's already happened to me. And so I let go of a contract, and it was a big one. And it just like, because it just wasn't right one. And now I'm kind of like.
And it just sounds like you really just need other eyes. I mean, it's mine, but one thing that I would say with Reclamation as well is that like, sometimes someone will ask a question because maybe they are not doing that, but a piece of what you're doing overlaps with what they're doing, or a huge chunk overlaps with something that they did. So like, I think that the thought partnership, it's almost like we're trying to solve a problem or we're trying to get dressed, but there's no mirrors. And then we need to walk into a room that has a few mirrors. And then you're like, oh, actually, this thing that I've been ruminating on because I have these mirrors is actually able to help me eliminate an option. Because sometimes the best thing you can do is take away some what ifs. Because it's like, okay, but what about this? And what about this? Is just take some away and say, that's not important right now. I'm realizing what I actually have to make a decision about is this, or here's my options. Because when it feels like 10 things, it feels like impossible versus clearing some of those out and having the reflection deck. So what I would say, but
well, thank you.
It's an interesting challenge.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for taking the time. Thank you, ladies, also for sticking around time. But okay, I booked my call, so Thursday I'll see you at 10 a.m. and I'm sure we'll have a ton more because my brain's already hitting a bunch of wires. So
no, all good. I'm like, it's end of day, so I think we're all no, not Patty. Well, actually, Patty, I don't know where you are. I was gonna say we're like all West Coasters, but
Oh, are
I'm
they? You
home.
guys are
It's late here.
home.
but
Okay.
It's all good.
super late.
I appreciate y'all hanging out with me. Till now and tomorrow, we'll talk soon. Thank you, Patty and
Thank you,
Kira, for
Kara
hanging
and
out,
Patty.
and
Very nice
Shani
to
for
meet you.
being here too. Like,
Yeah.
all
Very
right,
nice to meet
y'all.
you guys. Bye.
Have a good night.
Take care. You too.